because she came out of college $30,000 in debt, had a hard time finding a job that would pay her enough to pay it off. So then she went back to graduate school, got $100,000 in debt, trying to get a better job that would pay more. Still having a hard time finding a job that will pay enough. They say, don't worry about it. You can pay $150 a month on your loans, which she accumulates interest at $1,000. So now she's been out of grad school for a while. Instead of being $130,000 in debt, she's $150,000. Her biggest fear at 39 years old is that they will garnish her Social Security. They will garnish your Social Security. We have a chance. We have a chance right now to get back to doing big things in the state. But it means that we have to change our government. It means that we have to build a movement in the state across every line that they say is supposed to divide us. To be real clear, my family's lived, Mama's family's lived in 100-mile Chesapeake Bay for about 400 years. There's a game they play in politics here of scapegoating folks, pitting people against each other. It keeps us divided, and it allows, we're on opposite sides of the table picking at each other. The problems we all have in common just get bigger and bigger. There's another possibility, which is that we come together across all those lines, united by our common interest in moving our children forward, and we don't pass half measures, but we solve whole problems. What does that look like? It looks like taking that casino money that's gone the way of the lottery money and ensuring that it enhances our children's education, 2 kids in the public school, now replaces the historic funding. When they were running those bills to make it possible to build casinos here in Maryland, they promised us that the tax revenues, now $1 billion a year, would translate into better schools for all our kids. And that hasn't happened. And when you talk to folks in Annapolis, in the state capitol, they get very loyally, very fast. And they say, well, we promised you would go to education, and it is. Follow the dollars, they go to education. Well, what about the money that used to go to education? Well, now we spend that on something else. It's called a shell game. I've been a CEO most of my years since I was 26 years old, or a partner in the business. One thing you learn when you're a CEO is how to have tough conversations in a loving way with people who you care about, and that's what we should expect from the leaders in our state. We promise you the money would enhance education, and then they should say, and we will make sure that it does, but understand that revenues perhaps are softer than we expected. And therefore, there are other things that we're going to have to cut back on, but we're not going to take that education money and short-circuit our children's future, because that will just short-circuit our state. But that's not the conversation that they're having. They're kicking the can down the road, they're backfilling the holes, they're short-circuiting our kids' education in our state. What does it look like to get beyond half measures? It means that we don't talk about public option healthcare. We're talking about Medicare for all. And Washington won't do it because every branch of government is controlled by far right-wing extremists. Then we'll fix it right here in Maryland. California has a strategy. New York has a strategy. Nevada has a strategy. There's no reason why we can't do it. And let's be clear, it's not just Democrats who are interested in getting profiteering out of our healthcare system. I was in a backyard in Talbot County. A man raises his hand at the end of, said, I voted for Donald Trump. The room, the backyard kind of went, I have an uncle, I'm pretty sure voted for Donald Trump. He went to a lumberyard in New Hampshire. He said he was confused between Trump and Bernie. I was like, yeah, you wouldn't be telling me that you were confused if you were voting for Bernie. Yeah. Trump voters are not crazy. human beings try one thing, it doesn't work for them, we'll try something else. I don't think it was a good decision. But if somebody says they're a Trump voter, I still want to hear what they have to say. So I said, sir, how can I help you? He said, well, I just got one question for you. I said, what's that? So are you for single-payer health insurance? I said, yes, I am. He said, well, then I will vote for you, and I'll organize other people voting for Donald Trump. How do you vote? And I said, yeah, but I said, why? I got one question for you. Why? He said, well, I'm a finance manager at a car dealership. And then every year I dread the same day. It comes every year. It's that day we find out how much more our health insurance costs are going up than we expect. And then I got to have two conversations that I don't like having. The first one is with my boss to say, once again, we will need to revise down our profit projections. And the other one is with the employees in the cause, and whom I love, explain to my fellow employees that once again, when it comes to their health care coverage, they will be paying more and getting less. The bottom line is our business doesn't get stronger and our employees don't get healthier until we take the profit motive out of basic health care. Americans are 5% of the world's people. We are 60% of big pharma's profits. That's outrageous. It also means that there's a better deal to be struck. Big pharma can afford to give us back a bit. Talked to an 80-year-old woman in Prince George's County of a Beltway barbecue battle. I said, ma'am, how are you today? She said, oh, I'm fine. So you need to know I'm a member of the working poor. So what does that mean for you? She said, it means I'm 80 years old and I go to work every day taking care of a 96-year-old man so that I can get enough money to pay for my pharmaceuticals. Chairman of my campaign. Grew up in the housing projects, went to Morgan State University, went to the Wharton School of Business, was a successful entrepreneur, made a bad bet just before the recession started. Now works at the Horseshoe Casino for 10 times the life of Washington. And almost 80 years old. And he can take care of his ailing wife and her folks. No matter what happens in Washington, we must make sure that everybody in Maryland has access to health care, has affordable health care. If they want to pull back Obamacare, replace it with Trump care, which is nothing but a subsidy for the rich, and an excuse to take away health insurance of 24 million people in our country with 100,000 deaths, we must be prepared to step up as a state. This is not just about people dying. And let me be clear. I was in Montgomery County 2 nights ago, and a man I worked with in politics for more than a year, for the last 2 years, came up to his side. His girlfriend, 52-year-old psychologist, well regarded in her field, could not afford health insurance. Snap a left. July 8th, he found her dead in her bed, asphyxiated from seizure. Her father, who's a medical director at a big hospital in New York, said, yes, I understand when it says the cause of death is on her death certificate. But it was, she suffocated from seizure. And he said, let's just make it plain. My daughter died because she could not afford health insurance. We can stop. But in order to do that, we will need to build a movement of working families in the state, again, across every line they say is supposed to adopt. I've made now more than 14 trips to the rural parts of the state. And more than I can count through the big counties. And we have the possibility this year to do just that. They say our governor is popular. You know, I'd like to have a beer with him too. But I'm sure that he's taken note that the would you vote for him number has dropped from 51 to 41 since Donald Trump took office. An anonymous Democrat has surged from 30 to 37. And why is that? Because our governor, every week, Donald Trump has been in office. This man, it was all bluster when he thought Hillary Clinton was going to be president, said he would not vote for Donald Trump. And then Donald Trump became president, what happened? Donald Trump appointed Mr. Pruitt to head the EPA. Mr. Pruitt had attacked the Chesapeake Bay Plan from Oklahoma, a landlocked state. Big opinions about what we do here in the Chesapeake Bay. I don't care what party Mr. Hogan's in, that was more than enough reason for any governor of Maryland of any state to say, hold up, time out, please. But what happens a month later after Pruitt comes in office? He proposes to zero out the Chesapeake Bay Plan, as if that was a surprise. Then Mr. Hogan, we get Betsy DeVos, right? The most anti-public education, Secretary of Education in the history of America. He tours the state with her about a week after, and adding insult to injury, about a week after he announced he was shifting millions of dollars from our general fund, not to public schools, but to vouchers. Vouchers that would go to private schools that the legislative report said 80% of the students who received these vouchers were already in those schools. That was not school choice, that was private school subsidy plans. Then Mr. Hogan picks somebody from the Heritage Foundation, like a bona fide far right-wing extremist wingman, to head our health commission. A man who loves Trump care, hates Obamacare, and doesn't seem bothered by the fact that not only do we have tens of thousands of Marylanders who don't have health care, that would create tens of thousands more. It would also cause our rural hospitals to implode. No problem to him, he calls that a free market. The reality is that finance dealer made plain, our free market doesn't work. It doesn't work well for working people if the government doesn't step up and play its role. If our government has a role, it's basic things of making sure we have good public education, making sure students don't go into debt when they go to college, making sure that everybody here has access to health care, families don't have to go bankrupt, people's loved ones don't have to die unnecessarily. And finally, making sure that our public safety system works. And increasingly, that means actually deciding that there are limits to what we can use prisons for. Prisons should be used for the most dangerous people in our society. They are not going to be places to send actors. Prison costs about twice as much as rehabilitation. You can get pretty much every drug you can get on the street, you can get into prison, so your addiction doesn't stop. And that addict now gets abused in ways that they wouldn't have been abused in rehabilitation. It comes back more dangerous to our society and just as addicted. Mr. Hogan talks a good talk about the opioid epidemic, but if you look at where he's sending the money, he's sending the money to law enforcement for a redux on the failed war on drugs. Little babies like the friends of that 14-year-old in Talbot County who she buried this year, they don't need prison. That's not going to solve the problem for them. They need rehabilitation on demand. It will cost us less, and it will build their lives. It will allow them to rebuild their lives. I met a woman on the street in Tacoma Park the other day with her husband who's a vet. She said, there's two things you need to know. One, I'm a school teacher, and two, I'm recovering. She's been hooked on painkillers like so many. It was rehab. Can you imagine what would happen to his life, to their baby's life, if our state is sent her to prison when what she needed was rehab? So ladies and gentlemen, I'm asking for your help today. I'm asking for you to sign up with She Qatar has, to go to benjealous.com, to join us in building a movement across the state of working families so we can get Maryland back to working for working families the way it works for my family. We have the opportunity to step up, like past generations stepped up for us, and make sure that all of our children, all of our babies have access to American youth. Right now, there are obstacles in their way, and most of them created by bad public policy. And I believe that good public policy can undo what bad public policy is what. It means we have to come together. Thank you, and God bless.
Fully agree with affordable health care, affordable higher education, so we can people watch all the other nations out and stuff, right?
Yeah.
One other thing, I used to work in elections, and a very important thing that I did learn, I don't have to use it with me, but for every dollar thrown into rehabilitation, it returns about $7 back to the fund.
Yes.
Obviously,
Yes.
people pay taxes, we're not drawing enough people in those offices.
No, that's exactly right. Prisons don't have nearly the same issue.
Do you know if you would support the State Climate Alliance, where states are saying that they support the tenets of the Paris climate?
Yes. No, look, it's like notable that Mr. Hogan has told us what he would do if he were president. He hasn't done anything as governor. The reality is, I said that morning on Democracy Now! Before Trump pulled out of the Paris Accord, later that afternoon, that were I governor, we would sign on to the Paris Accord. Absolutely. We have to actually go further than that. The Paris Accord's a good document. It's not a great document. It's a compromise. We can go further. Our state has set a goal, I believe, by 2022 of being at 25% clean and renewable energy. Well, Germany's at 35% today. We can be much further, much faster. I've said that we need to be at least 100% by 2050, or if we will, at 100% at least by 2050, if that's and we can do that. And what let's be clear, we can build our economy in part by being a little bit like Wayne Gretzky in hockey. And Wayne said he was great because he would skate to where the puck was going. Well, the puck on energy is headed towards clean and renewable energy. And the way Maryland will get there is a mix of offshore wind and solar, primarily. I think there were solar panels right out here in the parking lot. Pretty cool. And it will actually be, disproportionately offshore wind. What's good about that is that the jobs that are required to build those turbines and maintain them are highly specialized jobs. Not just like the $15 per hour good jobs like install a solar panel where they're likely clean, like $50-hour machinist union jobs to build highly technical equipment. Well, if we're going to invest aggressively in growing clean and renewable energy, which we will do when I'm governor, then we will also move aggressively to make sure that we are building and maintaining those turbines here. And that becomes a win-win for us. The third win in that is that if we become sort of the regional center for clean tech production, clean energy tech production, then as other states come online, we'll benefit disproportionately as the source. Yes, sir.
One of the problems that we're facing in this area, and I haven't seen many other candidates talk about it, is also digital infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's imperative that we have fast-speed internet, fiber optics going in so we can bring in better jobs.
Yeah, no, throughout the state.
Yeah, we have Amazon and Lidl coming in Cecil County, but let's be real, they'll be automated in 30 years, and they're not skilled jobs. So we need, Kent County's putting in a fiber optic loop. Do you have any plan to put something like that in throughout the state to help rural districts that don't really have access to things like that?
Yeah, no, look, we are asking friends in industry and the academy, both for their best thoughts about how we get a statewide grid. It is a problem kind of everywhere you go. And we, in a lot of our sort of exurban to rural areas, places with large tracts of land, you'll find a lot of fallow, formerly light industrial space. Right now, there is what we call a micro-manufacturing or a maker's movement across the country. Folks setting up small factories. They've got to have access to high-speed internet. So you can't really move those in to Hagerstown or Columbia or anywhere on the Eastern Shore. Unless there's a 21st century grid. And so yeah, that would be a priority. You also will create thousands of jobs.
Awesome.
Website is benjealous.com. BENJEALOUS.
Plans to help small businesses thrive in this state.
Well, one thing is to make sure that we make getting access to credit faster, easier. A lot of small businesses in Maryland fail before they're through. And part of that is often that banks won't give you a conventional line of credit. until you have 2 years of tax returns, which can take about 3 years to get. And then you end up turning to factoring, which is very expensive. It doesn't take all your profits because you can't get a conventional line of credit. So, I work in the tech industry. One of the things we invest in are financial services technologies. And what's clear is that there are computer programs now that would empower a bank to better analyze risk in 2 years of tax returns by accessing big data on clients and looking at a whole range of factors that are easily accessible online. I believe that our state takes a gamble whenever we recruit a corporation. You offer a bunch of incentives to come, we're here for a little bit, and some other state offers a bunch of other incentives and leave, or they have you over a barrel now and they take you from there. Well, if we acknowledge that that's a gamble, then we should be willing to, and we can also acknowledge that most jobs are created by small businesses. And we should be able to take a gamble in support of our small businesses and support our local banks by the state underwriting the risk for them to make loans faster than they're accustomed to, so small businesses can do it faster.
One of my issues is that when the state is having to the large corporations to recruit them, but there's nobody, giving any kind of tax credits to the small businesses. I started a small business 5 years ago, it's a struggle to be successful.
Yeah.
Yes.
They make it very hard in ways that are easy for easy for a big corporation to comply with, but hard for a small business. I was trying to move a factory from Edmonton, Canada, a small factory, to Baltimore on the theory that we were more competitive. And we hit a number of factors. We also figured out that there were tax credits, but we had to let them know a year in advance how many jobs you projected to create. And when you're in the midst of growing a small business, one, you don't have time to go research all that, and two, you don't know where you're going to be in a year, right? So, figuring out how you streamline that, figuring out, quite frankly, as a business person, I happen to be a Democrat who has met regulations that I do not like. One of the things that we'll do is to actually go through our regulatory framework and figure out how we streamline it and make it easier. We talk to people who are creating food-based small businesses, a restaurant or taco stand or whatever. It can be way too tough in many places. So yes, we would put the state government firmly on the side of small businesses because they're our best bet for creating an economy that builds on itself.
In preparing our workers to work in a more technologically digitized world, what do you see as your vision for changes in the school systems to prepare our children for these demands?
Every child needs to be taught to code from grade 1.
Yes.
That's what the UK does. That's what Singapore does. This $1 billion, that's what we're going to find out from the Kerwin Commission, which is now looking at state of education in Maryland and whether we meet not the highest standards for preparing our children for the future, but the minimum standards created by our state constitution. That we're $1 billion to $2.5 billion behind, meaning our minimum standards. The minimum is minimum. You don't want a minimum house or a minimum wage or a minimum car. You know what I'm saying? You don't want a minimum education. For a minimum education, we're $1 billion, $2.5 billion people. So we're going to be really smart. In other words, getting the casino dollars to enhance the education may just take us right up to the minimum of where we need to be. And that means that we have to spend those dollars the smartest way possible. So there's two things on that point. One is, we need to make sure that the basics are covered and covered well. That includes coding. They will not just be competing against kids in Pennsylvania or Virginia or DC or West Virginia. They'll be competing with kids in the UK and Singapore, and they're being taught starting at age 6 right now, every day. Two, that means a high-quality teacher in every classroom. We have to be prepared to better compensate, especially young teachers. Many places, I wouldn't be surprised if up here you have some teachers headed off to other states to teach coming back here. Certainly in Prince George's County, we'll be starting to teach at about $44,000. There's plenty of Boston line to DC where they can make $60,000. But you also have to make sure that you're training teachers aggressively to keep up with these changes in technology so that they're better teaching our kids. And you know, when it comes to high stakes testing, that we're advocating for a regime that works and doesn't just lead to just kind of over-testing the children and their undereducation. You know, and the third thing is that we have to make sure that we're spending our money in the most effective way possible. And we have, you know, you can have two schools neighboring each other, and one of them literally has no assistant principals, but all the books and iPads that the kids need. And the other one has 8 assistant principals, and is short on books and even paper. Like, real story. And that's why us, you know, making sure that that the principals are really empowered to manage their budgets in real time, that how they're managing their budgets is transparent to the state, to the county and ultimately to the state, and then we tie that to reform. So we can say to a principal, look, this is your budget structure and these are your outcomes. And then right over here, this is their budget structure and these are their outcomes. And finally, frankly, we have to stop the history of allowing people to fail up in education. You know, you get people who were good teachers, so we made them principals, okay. But now it turns out we train them to manage and they're being bad managers, and then we put them in the administrative office because they were a bad principal. That doesn't make any sense. Apparently they used to be a good teacher, give them the option to go back to being a teacher.
When you use the property taxes to support education, that means the poor communities have less money for education than the rich communities. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and that's why you actually have to have greater subsidy from the state, and that's, you know, for instance, where the casino money, you know, would come in. The bottom line is, the most important thing is to ensure that every child, there's sort of 3 parts of the bottom line. 1, we must ensure every child has a great teacher and a great education. 2, in addition to the race-based achievement gap in our state and our country, we have a class-based achievement. And that is ultimately as important or more important because, you know, when you look at the numbers of school children, you got half were impacted by the race-based achievement gap, half for whom that's not an issue, but all of these kids impacted by class-based achievement gap. When you look at Singapore, for example, they tend to lead the world's top 30 economies in K through 12 educational outcomes. We tend to lag at the very bottom. I asked somebody once to explain, from Singapore, to explain why they were at the top and we were at the bottom. They said, well, it comes down to 2 things. 1, we sent some of our best and brightest leaders to one of the best universities in the United States, the School of Education. And when they came back, we did what they told us to do. So y'all should try that. They have one education directory. We have 16,000 school districts. A little more complex based on our concept. 2, said, we cannot explain our outperformance relative to yours based on the performance of our wealthy children alone. Our wealthy kids perform the same as your wealthy. Give children worldwide every resource they need to perform best. So no, the only way we can explain is that the gap between how our poor children and how our rich children perform in Singapore is 4 times smaller than it is in the United States, between your poor kids and rich. Now, about half of that gap can be explained by what is called the maldistribution of highly qualified teachers. In other words, you get a highly qualified teacher in every classroom, we can close our gap between our poor kids and rich kids by half. The rest of it is primarily resources. About 20% of it is parenting. The state can control resources. Parents have to control parenting. We can do things to inspire and educate them. But what we can do is we can close that gap by 80%. By the effective deployment of resources, starting with good teachers, coding, access to iPads, access to books. And again, there's a role for the state in funding schools throughout the state. We cannot rely simply on low property taxes for the reasons I pointed out, which is simply to reinforce existing patterns of undereducation and make us lag in our economy. And short-circuit kids, ultimately short-circuit children's lives.
2014, Baltimore City didn't support Anthony Brown. How do you expect to gin Baltimore City up so that you can get enough votes out of that jurisdiction?
Look, we know that the Republicans are nervous about my campaign. We have a tracker here today, we're recording it on behalf of the GOP. How you doing? Good. You do your job, I'll do mine. The Republican Governors Association, I'm the only one that they've begun attacking online. They've also begun to set up spoof websites and send around FOIAs. So the question is, why are they more concerned about me? Apparently than they are the campaigns. I'm the former president and CEO of the NAACP. If there's one thing I know how to do, it's to turn out voters. Larry Hogan is governor. If there's one thing he knows about how he became governor, it's that Democrats did not turn him. He won by 63,000 votes in a year when 125,000 Democrats for us did not show up. And Republican counties, deep red counties that year voted 15 to 30% above normal in many cases. That accounts for 60,000 of the 63,000. It doesn't matter how popular he is if folks won't vote for him. And the reality is, with Donald Trump in office, and us on Trump's doorstep, and him playing the role of Trump's doormat, we ain't gonna vote for him. And we will turn out. So our strategy is to run a strong campaign, be up on television aggressively, be in the streets aggressively, organize. We turn out the likely voters. If he gets as many votes as last time, he'll lose by 63,000. We turn out unlikely voters, and he'll get walked. And that's our intention. By the way, I think that's why he was so ambivalent about, his part of him knew it was the wrong thing to do, to send somebody over to Trump's election suppression commission, who ultimately resigned. But I think the first instinct to participate came from the fact that he knows that voter suppression is kind of the only way that he gets back in office.
I wanted to ask a series of questions about the environment. One, I wanted to ask if you would support banning all new development of fossil fuel infrastructure. Two, I wanted to ask if you would support 100% renewable energy around by either 2035 or 2050. And three, I wanted to ask whether you would support either a ban or the plastic bags across the state.
Sure. Yeah, so I've already said 2050 or earlier on clean and renewable energy, so we're there. Plastic bags are a real problem. I live on the edge of I live in Pasadena, on the edge of the Chesapeake Bay, ultimately, Grays Creek, United River, Silver Bay, Chesapeake Bay. Whether it's turtles or some types of fish, plastic bags just can't pieces of them. So I'm all for moving from plastic bags to reusable bags and to paper bags, which are biodegradable, not purpose. On the issue of gas, look, we have to transition to clean and renewable energy, and there will be, I'm sure, for instance, if you have a well holding gasoline in the ground at a gas station, you're going to want to renew that well every now and then, because otherwise it will leak into the drinking. So there's a difference between new infrastructure.
Well, I guess
that is.
You're
talking about fracking.
Yeah, I'm talking about mostly pipelines.
Yep.
Like I'm thinking right now, like the Eastern Panhandle project.
No, look, I've been very clear that that pipeline is as dangerous as fracking. I'm totally opposed to that. Now they want to put a pipeline under the Potomac. This is not because West Virginia is starved for natural gas, let's be clear. We've got plenty. It's to bring down the price of natural gas in West Virginia by a couple of pennies.
Yeah, so I guess what
we would not, when I'm governor, we will not risk America's river so that West Virginia can get natural gas for cheaper and cheaper.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm asking is, would you ban all new pipelines from being built? Other things that would ensure that the fossil fuel industry would thrive in America?
Yeah.
Not just to maintain, but to expand it?
I was against Keystone. I'm against this pipeline. I haven't, we're studying the issue, this question kind of as far as all pipelines. I need to understand kind of what already exists. Again, every pipeline leaks. So there could come a time, for instance, when you need to replace an existing pipeline, I don't know, some better technology. But again, I was against Keystone, I'm against the one out in the western part of the state, the one put under the Potomac. I have yet to find a pipeline that I like. I think I would stop short of saying that I would be opposed to all, because I'm very aware that while we do this transition, we have to do it in a safe way. And sometimes building something new is the best way to keep something old from leaking.
So about pipelines, I've worked in the field for many years.
Okay.
Yeah, Keystone is insane.
Yeah, totally.
And some others, right? But there's a lot of pipelines that are used just in a local thing, say going from Wilmington to Philly, or something like that. They're pretty much safe, and they can be checked constantly. So
Yeah, no,
just the
like I
one
said,
word doesn't have to be terrorized.
Yeah, no, look, I think that's right. And again, if you upgrade, you get a better technology, you may want to get a new one to replace the old. Right? There's various things.
In addition to drug addiction problems, we also have a problem with mental health access.
Yes.
Around here in the rural areas, folks it'll be a 3-month wait, and sometimes for our students more so, which sometimes causes the drug addiction problem or rolls into. So how do you see, especially in the rural areas, providing more access to mental health care services?
Yeah, the federal government should be pushing Medicare for all right now, not Trump care. If they don't fix the problem, it looks like they're actually going to make it worse. We will fix it here in the state. When you have health care for all, you have mental health care. That makes teachers' lives better. It makes social workers' lives better. It makes police officers' lives better. It makes EMS workers' lives better. Because all of those folks end up playing the role at some point of being the mental health worker of last resort. And most of them aren't trained. Social workers are, like the rest of them are. And people's lives can go from bad to worse in an instant, like everybody involved in the equation. So, and let's be clear, we have children who are growing up in abusive or violent environments. We have neighborhoods in some cities where, like West Baltimore, where my family's from, you have clusters of blocks where the CTSD incidence is higher than PTSD of soldiers returning from Iraq. Because these kids have grown up in a war zone, and they still live in it. So they don't have post-traumatic anything, they have continuous traumatic stress disorder. And yeah, so the need for mental health is acute in our rural areas, it's acute in our urban areas. The governor will make sure we have health care for all, and mental health care for all. And it will make all of our sort of first responders, frontline public servants, and teachers' lives better and safer.
I attended a workshop a couple of weeks ago with the Department of Maryland Education, and there is a serious issue around suspension of minority students and how they deal with that.
Yep.
And from what I can tell, I've been very involved in the school system. And it's my belief that that is not going to change if there's not any accountability being held at the state level. If they don't get involved and hold these public school systems accountable for that disproportionate amount of suspensions, and it's only recording the first suspension. It's not recording all the other suspensions.
Yeah.
And it seems that the answer to that is to put the child in special ed versus addressing what might be the issue. And my concern too is that we still struggle with having minority teachers equivalent to the level of minority students that we have in the school system. So I'm not saying no one can't understand what someone else is feeling, but if you have not walked in the shoes of that minority group, then how can you as an educator fully understand what the battle is? And instead of just trying to assist with it, we want to put them in special ed. And unfortunately, that just puts a stigma on the person for their entire life. So what are your thoughts on how we can address that? And how can the state possibly develop some programs or some accountabilities for the public school system to address those challenges?
You know, there were a lot of solutions implied in your question. One of them is that we have to be tracking well and tracking accurately, and then responding to, and when I say tracking well, I don't mean tracking students, I mean tracking instances of suspension and discipline. And then actually responding to what the data tells us about how children are being treated. We know nationally that a young white male child is seen as a problem kid on the 6th offense by teachers, on average. A young black male child on the 2nd offense. And we know because we all raise kids. That lots of kids go through phases where they're just more of a problem, like this 6-month period, but a year later they're a totally different kid. And we got kids dealing, kids, especially with lower income children of any race, they bring all the stress from home, all the economic stress with them, right? You talk to these kids like, I don't know where I'm going today because mom's being evicted while I'm here. And I don't know if I should get on the bus. And so we need to make sure, yes, that we're sort of aware of the journey that our country is still on to getting to the place where we see all of our kids as all of our kids. I was with Jack Kemp once. He was a Republican who had run for president. We were in Los Angeles after the riots, 10-year anniversary of the Rodney King riots, Rodney King uprising. And he was on fire talking about education, these very issues. About our kids, our kids, our kids, our kids, our kids. There's an older black woman who'd grown up in South Central Los Angeles sitting next to me. And she leans over to me and she says, whose kids is he talking about? Ma'am, he's talking about the children down the street here in South Central LA. He said, is he from here? I said, no, he's from upstate. I said, no. I said, ma'am, I get your point, but I think his point is, they are all American children, we are all Americans, and so therefore they are all our kids. We're the grown-ups, we're the children, we're responsible to make sure that they succeed. And in a society that has both the legacy of slavery and the legacy of indentured servitude, we have real problems trapping people because of their color and because of their income. And we've got to be committed to breaking out of both. And the best way to do that is education. And that's why we all have to be concerned and frankly aware of what we bring to the table and how do we move beyond that. We got as far as desegregation in our society. In most places it's been greeted by resegregation. We never really got to integration. And we don't get to move beyond the patterns of locking young people out of a better future because their parents were poor, or locking them out of a better future because they're darker than other children in the school, until we as grown-ups decide that we're going to be courageous enough to put everything on the table and just deal with it. Our own fears, our own discomforts, our own bad things we've been taught. And it's, and by the way, it means all of us got some work to do. I was, one day, it's great now, right? Your cell phone, you can Google things and find out things, right? And I know, there's certain appetites I really respond poorly to when people call me. I know the history. But I was in a room where somebody said something to somebody else I objected to. I was like, where does that come from? So I Googled the origin of the acronym Pt2. Where does this come from? It came from free blacks in Baltimore. Slaves and house slaves in Baltimore. Now it was picked up by wealthier whites to attack their poor brothers and sisters. But that's what I say, like all of our communities bring something to the table, right? In this country, we've been here long enough, there are no saints. We've all committed some sin. And our children get hurt when we don't see the commonality, the common interest, when we don't see them as all our kids. And that's where softness starts, because we say these are all our kids. And that's why we have to be aware of the racial patterns and the class-based patterns and be prepared to deal with them.
Thank you. childcare affordability.
Yep. There's, you know, that's a big, you know, so I'll also talk about my views for building the economy here, because I haven't talked about that, and that's critical. We are a wealthy state with a lot of poverty. The only way to get the poverty is to become an even wealthier state. On this issue of childcare, we're working on a plan right now. My son has just started kindergarten. I'm like, I've been paying a lot. He goes to the YMCA. It's not some fancy place. You pay full freight at the YMCA. It's like 15 grand a year. It's pretty cost prohibitive. So, yes, we're working on a plan. We've already signed up so that we will have universal treatment. That takes a year off of the equation. I would like to see us get to universal 3K. That will take 2 years off the equation. It will also better set up our kids to succeed. Children do not show up ready to learn by kindergarten. By kindergarten, they're already being fast-tracked towards being a driver. But we also are very clear have to make sure that the minimum wage catches up with inflation, which means it needs to be at least $15 per hour. We also need to make sure that working people in our state have schedules that allow them to know to build a life to care for their children. Chairman of my campaign works at the Horseshoe Casino. My 19-year-old nephew, who's with me and who's responsible for his disabled mother, adopted, our families were raised together like one family. So he calls him, I call him nephew. True in every way but that. But he's responsible for his mom's 49 and permanently disabled. He works for 5 guys. He can afford health insurance for him, barely, because he lives in my basement, but not for her. And he never knows week to week, or at least every 2 weeks, what his schedule is. It's a mix of days and nights that changes all the time. God forbid you're trying to raise a child. So the unemployment rate in our state does not tell the whole story back. We need a series of reforms. We need to make sure that universal education gets younger and younger. Start moving towards having a solution for 0 to 3, starting with 4 to 3-year-olds. And we also need to deal with the underlying problems with the economy. The wages are too low, so parents have to work too many jobs, and schedules are unpredictable. And that creates further challenges for proper child rearing. On the issue of leave, I'm all for paid sick leave, paid family leave. I think the governor's bill was ultimately too little. It's the basic, managed payrolls for a very long time. I understand why a business person would want people to be available at the beck and call all the time and pay them as little as possible. We're also responsible as business people for being pillars of our community and creating a society that we all want to live in. And that type of approach undermines us being a strong state, and strong families, which are the building blocks for strong communities.
I wonder how much, some of these regulations that Trump has signed that do things like allow for more toxins to enter our waterways from coal companies or different places, how much control a governor could have in their own state. I guess companies are allowed to do something by, a presidential edict or whatever. These companies can still do these things. So I'm just wondering where a governor might be able to do some of this.
In many instances, states can create tougher environmental regulations than the federal government. The federal government is typically a minimum, so you move forward. The other thing is that there are ways you can incinerate folks upstream. The way, for instance, in small farms in Pennsylvania are upstream of our water to do the right thing. Other states have decided, for instance, that they would actually provide financial incentives for those farmers to build what's called a live edge at the edge of the farm that catches the waste. It could be in a pond, it can just be in more diverse plants than, say, just doing soybeans to the water or corn to the water. And so you have to look at all the options. You have to look at options as far as regulation. really as far as environmental protection measures, you also have to look at what we can do through the marketplace, just incentivize small businesses, like family farmers, sometimes in our state, sometimes on our river, but upstate, but across the border up in a different state like Pennsylvania, to do the right thing so we have clean water. Either way, we need to make sure, with regards to the Chesapeake Bay, that if we're zeroed out in the budget, in part because our governor didn't stand up to the president and demand a different EPA issue, that we get the 6 states that are part of the Chesapeake Bay Compact to replace those funds. And then we'd be willing to leave us a no bill cash.
I was wondering what your views on increasing safe gun measures would be in Maryland. Specifically, I'm thinking of this program or this law that was going to put in place in California, and I think maybe Washington and Oregon now, where if someone seems to be a danger to himself, herself, or others, a family member or law enforcement can get basically an injunction, so an emergency injunction, which would last up to 5 days, and then a judge can implement
Sure.
a 1-year injunction.
Look, people who are mentally unstable, the last thing that they need is a gun. And there's a lot of wisdom in what you're talking about. When I was a young graduate school student, I was looking at handgun deaths of young black men like myself, that went from 15 to 30, I'm older now. And ran right into the fact that the suicide rate from handguns for white men over 55, like my father, who has black moms and dad, was higher. White men were dying at a higher rate, not just higher numbers, from handgun deaths because of suicide than black males were dying from homicide. We would talk about homicide in the black community publicly in the news and whatever, but it was like stumbling into a big secret that guys like my dad were offing themselves at a higher rate. We need